This video might be a little bit different. At least I'm going to start it off differently than the way I typically do. And by that I mean, I want you to look at something with me. Look at that right there. Amazing example of femininity, if I've ever seen one. I mean, am I right? Am I right? What an amazing... Now that gal right there is crushing the Ivy League female swim meets. Not only the epitome of beauty, but swims like a fish. Maybe she is a fish. Who knows? A mermaid, maybe? I don't know. Beautiful, though, right? Am I right about that? Of course I'm right. That's what we're told, so that must be true. And since we're on the subject of amazing people, that guy there, I mean, that's the leader of the free world. And you don't just become the leader of the free world without being an amazing human being. I mean, we know this is true. This guy won an historic election. Historic. So good, so good. That he got more votes than anyone ever, but out of the least amount of counties. That takes amazing skill. Amazing skill. And he did it from his basement. It's incredible. It's absolutely incredible. And, you know, people will make fun of him, but the truth is he's such a genius that just the peons, you know, like us, me and you, the people that we're just the slow people, we can't understand that level of communication. That's really what's going on. He's so good, so above us in his ability to communicate that we just can't comprehend it. And that's basically what it is. And so, you know, the serfs, you know, pretty much will complain, like, you know, serfs always do, about the leaders, right? That are better than them, obviously just better than them. And communication is obviously just one way in which they're so much better than we are. All right, so sarcasm over. I wanted to start this video off by demonstrating the absurd, because we live in absurd times. Right now, as I speak to you, the Ukraine is under attack from Russia, and how did we get here? Is, I guess, what I'm sort of wanting to base this video on. I mean, the idea that, maybe you've heard this phrase: strong men make good times make weak men make hard times make strong men. I think it's fair to say that we have been the beneficiaries here in America of good times. We've had good times. And because of that, we are weak men. And weakness is, I would say, a vacuum of sorts in nature. And nature abhors a vacuum. Weakness is not going to just exist without strength attempting to overwhelm it. And so, if you look on the world stage historically, you'll notice a pattern that takes place where nations, nation states, empires, whatever term you makes the most sense for whatever time you're looking at, you get to a point where one empire becomes the dominant, and that empire then becomes fat, lazy, lethargic, decadent, and absurd. I mean, that's just what happens. They just start to do things that are just not what got them where they were. Kind of like if you watch football, how when you get ahead, you inevitably you throw the prevent defense on and then allow the other team to come back. So something to that effect. And culturally, in a grand scheme of things, it appears that the way this works is that um, you get cultural cannibals. I don't know if you notice the people who know everything in our society haven't experienced anything. All they've experienced are these good times, and they go uh, off the money, using the money that their parents have and wealth their parents have created. They go to universities and learn a bunch of nonsense, and then come out telling everybody else how life works. And those who are people are those type of people are running our societies. It's like a race to the bottom, lowest common denominator, this sort of thing. We're just spiraling down, and that's what's happening to our culture. And I think that you can see this, right? There's this concept of toxic masculinity, this push against the patriarchy. Well, what does that mean, right? It means strength. You're against strength. We're against being strong because strength's been redefined, right? I mean, this is strength now. A man going against women, a a a an incontinent, incompetent world leader has been selected for us. And how did it happen? It's because our system has been undermined. Our identity, we don't even know who we are. And we're participating in our own demise. The people who are the loudest and the most efficient at getting and spreading their message are cultural cannibals. Get on Twitter. Social media has taken, um, it may not be an accurate portrayal of society, but it is a bit of a temperature gauge for where we are. Um, the large corporations that control social media are in bed with the government, and they push and support and coddle people who spew nonsense on social media. The term nonsense could mean different things to different people. I mean, obviously we live in a polarized society. I'm consider myself libertarian slash conservative, so left wing nonsense is what I'm explaining to you is the rot of our society. You may see it differently, so if you do, you're wrong. it's just it's just that, and I'm open to being having my mind changed, but I've been open now for a long time, and what I find is left wing people want to shut you up. They don't want to talk to you. So if you want to tell me you've got the best ideas, one way to prove you that you're a liar and that you don't is to tell me you don't want to talk about your ideas. So, I mean, that's pretty much how that works for me. If you want to just force somebody's hand instead of changing their mind, then that means you don't have an idea that's good enough to change people's mind, and you know that. And that's the whole point of it. And that's why the left wants safe spaces and they want to cancel people. And the right does that too, to a certain extent. This stuff spreads, but the left is the bastion of nonsense, the fountain of stupidity with which we get this cultural rot that we have. So like postmodernist thinking, where essentially you can foist this on the people by making this absurd claim that definitions are social constructs that you can fight against, and you can be your own god essentially, and this is why they are in line with Satan, because it is the devil's dogma that they profess, right? And it's convinced Christians too. There's woke churches now. And of course there are. You can take anything. Once you go down postmodernist, what does it mean to be Christian? What does it mean to be compassionate? What does it mean to be charitable? All these things can become your own thing. You can just twist them into whatever you need them to be. What does it mean to be? We can't even figure out what it means to be male and female, right? But yet we know we're supposed to push against masculinity. And this is the thing that bothers me the most about it, it should be transparent if you just sort of looked at it and compared it. When you get into this sort of stuff where it becomes emotion based, right? Of course it is, because if it's postmodernism, it's about this idea that you can just take whatever you feel like at the time and make it. So if you feel like a woman, that everybody around me has to pretend along with me that I'm a woman. It's for some reason it's a lot easier. Well, how self-absorbed is it? How narcissistic is it to say that the world around me needs to change because I don't want to? It's too hard to change me, and everybody needs to bow down to how I feel. This attitude comes all everywhere, and it's feelings based, not logic based. And so when it comes to this stuff, you want to see it. You can see who's operating this way by judging the consistency of their arguments and as far as it's being applied. So when it comes to a certain health situation, the China virus, let's say, my body, my choice goes out the window. That's gone now. They used to love that stuff. They used to say that you know, like a chanting monk in a cathedral. That was one of their religious dogmas. My body, my choice. And they so easily threw it out. So easily threw it out. And guess what? They'll pick it back up again when they need to defend killing babies, because that's what they do. They're postmodernists. Nothing has to make sense. And the idea, again, that we're supposed to push against the patriarchy and masculinity, but yet we can't even really, but yet they pretend they don't define what those things are. They don't know what masculine is. They don't know, the idea that they're feminist, yet they seem to be they're always pushing this the Hollywood agenda, which seems to be creating and putting women only as sex objects, but they're the ones that care about women. The idea that the left, the Democrat parties, the party of blacks, when they historically have, and I would argue always and are to this day, against blacks, but they're the ones. This is what you get, right? Postmodernism. You get to change definitions. You get to change reality. And in regards to strength, this is the point of the spear in which all of these things get in and destroy society, our society, Western civilization, I would argue. And so when you get somebody like Putin, who, I don't care about his morality at this point. That's not exactly what I'm talking about. And I'm not making a stance, negative or bad or good for sure, on Putin. But I'm just operating from the concept of strength at this point. And we had somebody in Trump that was, even also very, very flawed, was a strong leader. And I don't think there's any coincidence that before Trump, Putin annexed Crimea from out under Ukraine while Obama was president, and now that Obama's vice president is in charge, he's in Ukraine. Well, he didn't do that when Trump was in there. And so it leads you to this idea that you do need masculinity. And it's beyond masculinity too. It's about right and wrong. You can say, the issue, I would argue, also the concept of going after masculinity, going and changing the whole dynamics of the way we even interpret everything is to go after truth itself. And when you're going after truth itself, you're really talking about Christ. There is no coincidence in my mind that the United States began biblically, and then now that we've pushed that away as well, we've opened ourselves up to nonsense. When it's this idea that, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. Well, we're falling for everything at this point because we forgot who we were. We forgot our identity. We don't even know what morality is anymore. Even the word morality even brings up this idea of like, how dare you? How dare you? We all have our own morality. Meanwhile, the people who say this are so defined and dogmatic in what they think they understand that they reserve the right to shut you down, regulate you, tell you, no, you're wrong, you're a Nazi. No, you're wrong, you're a racist. No, you're wrong, you're a sexist. No, you're wrong, you're a homophobe. So they know what morality is. Evil knows what morality is because it uses the concept of morality against the moral. The moral people are the ones who are affected by these things. It's the idea with guns too. Moral people who have guns are people who protect others. So you pass laws that get rid of guns, the moral people don't have guns anymore. It's the immoral people who have guns. Well, everything is like that in society. It's about strength, but it's also about standards, standing for something. And that's what Christ is and was. He stood for things. You can be the epitome of masculinity, but also every bit as loving as anyone could possibly be. Yet in our society, we make it seem like the two can't even coexist. Like, it's unloving to be masculine. It's unloving to be strong. And yet, we intuitively know that you need strength to protect the weak. And to protect the weak is loving. If everybody's weak, if everybody's sheep, which is what we are now, then who protects us from the wolves? And so back just real quick to the Ukraine situation. Now you have somebody, and let's just say the morality situation is up for grabs, right? How, even in our country, because we say this, right? So how do we morally condemn Putin? Like, how do we do that? Because we can't even find our moral center. But we see the strength. And the guy that we had that was strong, we removed him with an historic election, right? So we've we've installed what clearly has, in my mind, this is, I've always wondered about this from the start. Like, why Joe Biden? This guy could not win his party's nomination because he plagiarized. And yet somehow when he's old and feeble, he's now mustered the strength and the knowledge and the fortitude and everything we think of as a leader. Now he's got that. Yeah, it doesn't make sense. This guy was chosen for us by our enemies. That's obviously what happened. I mean, if you just connect and people can make fun of this all they want, but this is math. The math don't lie. And the people who sit there and just dismiss when people like me say what I'm saying now. They're doing just that. They're just dismissing it. They don't have arguments. They don't have arguments. Listen to their arguments. They stink. They suck. So this guy's here to play a role. There's people, and I've thought this from some time, even with Trump. The president is only so powerful. He's kind of like a he's installed, he's put there. Even if it's a fair election, the truth is that you've got all this mechanics behind everything that thrusts somebody up into those positions, and they're beholden to those people. So who is it behind the scenes? Who's the Wizard of Oz, right? Behind the old man in the wheelchair with, well, he's not in a wheelchair yet, but he should be in a chair with a warm blankie over his lap. Who's behind the scenes pulling the gears and the levers and things? Because he's not in charge, right? To a great extent, Trump wasn't in charge, but the appearance of strength was important. And that's what I'm trying to get across. And now we have no strength, and everybody sees it, and the bad guys are able to do what bad guys do. And there's something I wanted to add to this that I was thinking about. And it's been this, like, the Russia collusion narrative. Part of this seems to me that when Putin says what he says about NATO and the Ukraine, part of it to me looks as if even through Trump's terms, from Obama, Trump, and Biden, we've been poking Putin to a certain extent. I mean, even the Russian collusion, in a sense, was a poke at Putin. It was a lie. Everybody who knew the information and didn't just allow the mainstream media to indoctrinate them knew that this was a lie. Now it's provably a lie. And we're sitting there smearing another world leader, saying that they actually abused our democratic process. So that was poking the bear, let's say. And with NATO, we keep pushing NATO toward Putin, and his point has been, and you take it, I'm not saying we should do this or shouldn't do this. I'm saying here's how we've gotten where we are. Putin's point has been NATO was created as an anti-Russian coalition, and that's just true. That's true. And we keep pushing around and surrounding his country, and then telling him he ought to do this and we ought to do that, even while we're degrading ourselves and losing our moral authority to do so. My thoughts on this is, why didn't Trump change this? Because I could see, I think we've crossed the Rubicon on this, but it didn't have to be this way. There could have been a scenario in my mind where we did acquiesce to a certain extent. I mean, isn't it enough to have other countries that are somewhat close there in NATO? Do we have to have everybody in NATO? I mean, one of the things Trump was dealing with was even getting these people to pay. So the why didn't Trump do something? I guess is where I'm going with this. Although Putin felt he couldn't move, it seems, seemingly, while Trump was in office. Trump didn't do anything. I'm trying to think of the word here. He didn't do anything to help the situation geopolitically. Um, he didn't diplomatically. That was the word I was looking for. He didn't make any diplomatic overtures to help keep this situation from getting from where it is. And my thinking on that is this: that's part of what that whole Russian collusion thing was. Could you imagine It's amazing how the left works, right? So this Russian collusion thing, one, was completely a joke. Two, the media pushed it regardless, while pretending they hate people like Alex Jones. They acted just like Alex Jones, created a completely fake conspiracy theory and pushed it to no end as if true. Then the 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 political aim of that was to basically limit Trump. So he's got to constantly deal for his whole, practically his whole term. I think it was like 3 out of the 4 years he was dealing with this, where he was the bad guy, even though they spied on him. And he had to defend himself and his administration. So he's not able to do everything that he would have otherwise been able to do. Then they tied him to Putin with this charge. So, in regards to Russia specifically, he was neutered. There was no way for him to really do anything. So, if he acquiesced in any way to have stopped where we are, then could you imagine? That would have been evidence that he's Putin's lapdog. And evidence that that Putin had installed him, even though we now know, and I knew then, and most people who were reasonable knew, that that never happened and never that isn't reality. So you see, this is what's happening here: is the weak people are in charge. The Klaus Schwabs and the Bill Gates, the little dweebs who have gajillions of dollars and think so highly of themselves that they themselves think they, it's one of these things where if you listen to what they say, they want to limit the population. They are Thanos, except not strong, not masculine. They're lashing out at society. The people, it's interesting too, the people who want to limit population don't do it by example, do they? No, they need to stick around. It's the others that need to go. That's been a Democrat Party platform for a long time, by the way. For a long time. It's morality. It's fake strength, right? It's power exerted in a twisted manner. In a disgustingly backhanded, shadowy, evil, demonic way. A dark way. Whereas the light is in front, right? Strength, masculine strength, is standing firm for all to see. Weaselly, disgusting, underhanded, scheming, that's the left. And unfortunately, it's also the right in our politics as well, because they're a bunch of false choices. They claim to be what we're for what we're for, and then every time they're given the opportunity to do something, they find a reason to fail. They find a reason they can't do it. All the more reason why you don't put your security in the hands of politicians. So I'm gonna leave it there. Hopefully this is something you found something out of. So if you did, if you liked anything in it, or if you're feeling charitable, obviously right now, no, very few people are watching my videos, but I like doing this anyway. So if it's something you enjoyed, please share and like. Till next time.